Today, I'm going to share about my first failure. I know failure is kind of a dirty word outside of startup circles, and it's taken me quite a long time to come to grips with a new perception of failure. I want to share all the mistakes that I made in my first venture and not dwell too long on them, but just give a high-level overview of my first company, how it began, the key flaw that I had in the business model throughout, when I realized that things just weren't working, and what happened next. So if you know much of my story, you probably heard that I was a little bit bored in school. I wasn't much of a sit down, take a test kind of guy. I found it really painful and difficult. So I started messing around in my room, doing different things. Obviously was into making computers, into programming, got into doing websites and stuff, and I also discovered that I was really into kind of making clothes, and not that I was sewing things, but I would kind of paint on shoes, paint on shirts, make my own things that I felt were cool, and I really enjoyed it. And I remember the first moment that the business model emerged. I was with my friend Sharad Dadgar, and we were in Aurora Mall going up this escalator. And I got to the top of this escalator and this guy stares at the bottom of my shoes and goes, "Damn, man, how about them kicks? How much you get them for?" And I was, kind of surprised because I didn't know what he meant by kicks at first, but I got the picture quite soon. He asked about my shoes, how much I paid for them. I told him that I made them, and he offered me $250 for the shoes on my feet right then. Turns out he wasn't my size. I got his phone number, and I ended up looking on eBay how I could buy those same shoes in bulk and basically reproduce the design that I had made custom by hand at a bigger scale. Turns out the guy never responded to my phone call, but it was the beginning of an idea. And so I started making shoes for people, kind of one-off, custom by hand, airbrushing, basically leather Nike Dunks, Nike SBs, Nike Air Force Ones, and trying to see what I could do with that. And eventually I discovered that I could make an online store. I was using Google Checkout and Dreamweaver CS4 back in the day. It was ancient, it was old school. The website was terrible, but I was working on this kind of what you see is what you get interface to try and let people build their own designs and pay for me to make them. But the core fundamental flaw was that I didn't have a financially viable business model that could scale, in that I could spend hundreds of hours in my room making shoes and get paid, $2 or $3 an hour for them. Even if the shoes were selling for good money, it took so much time for me to do this. And as I tried to develop an online shop, which required scale, selling things in higher volumes in order to succeed, as soon as I transitioned to a more kind of production line manufacturing process, I lost quality and I even incurred more costs. And so even though my dad was amazing in supporting me in this venture, he gave me $4,000 after I decided to drop out of school, a single check, and said, "Go for it, son, make it happen." And so I ended up, getting a bit of traction in the market, starting to get some orders in, starting to get some sales. I remember I actually was targeting, my strategy was to make really cool custom clothes for the musicians that me and my friends were listening to and that we'd go to concerts and watch. And somehow I actually ended up getting backstage with Derek Vincent Smith at Pretty Lights through his drummer, Corey Eberhard. And the whole idea was we'd get photos of Derek wearing our clothes on stage and everyone would buy it, everyone would love it. Turns out it didn't happen that easily. People kind of liked it. It was okay. The quality wasn't great. We got some orders in, but ultimately as the business continued, I couldn't sustain it because there was no financial sustainability. There was no real profit margin. And, I ended up actually losing a lot of confidence and also really damaged a friendship along the way. I was working with a friend who was helping me with the designs and with the building process of the clothes, and I didn't treat him very well. I was pretty arrogant and I was pretty impatient, and I just didn't really know what I was doing. And rather than saying, hey, these are problems that I've identified, I've defined them, and now I'm going to find a way to solve them, I was very quick to let go and give up because I had instilled this belief in myself that successful entrepreneurs just had a knack, and you either... But actually what I didn't realize, that was my key failure, was believing that success sort of came by talent and not through perseverance. And I lacked the grit to combine perseverance with passion in order to overcome these obstacles, which were solvable problems. And I gave up. And that was my key failure. But I learned so much along the way. I learned how to code, I learned how to design, kind of crappily. I learned about marketing, I learned about sales, I learned about e-commerce, store management, I learned about wholesale, I learned all this stuff. And that was the success of that venture, was saying, I'm dropping out of uni, I'm gonna try this thing. I failed, but I learned loads, and I'm gonna keep on going. So I'll take you through each of my failures over the next 10 days or so and just unpack everything that I can and share it with you and see what you make of it. Hope that helps. Have a good day.